Hello class, today we are taking a look at some equations that have fractional coefficients and constants. So for this work we're going to be following our regular steps for dealing with equations, and we'll just have to do the work involved with dealing with those fractions and those in the different places. So in question 1 we have 3 single step equations, meaning there's only one solving step required. So we're going to take a look at our first equation. We have -6 is equal to 3/5 x. And we want to remember, of course, that this fractional coefficient, just like any coefficient, is being multiplied by that x. So we ask ourselves, what's the opposite of multiplying by 3/5? And it is, of course, dividing both sides by 3/5. Now, on the right side, our 3/5 divided by 3/5 cancels out, leaving us with just x. On the left side, we have the calculation -6 divided by 3/5. To do this calculation, we first want to write our -6 as a fraction, which is -6 over 1. And remember, our rule for dividing fractions is to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to change that divide to multiply, and we're going to flip our second fraction. Now 6 divides by 3 to give us 2, and -2 times 5 is -10. So -10 is the value of our x. In the case of question B, when we take a look at our x, it is currently being subtracted by 2/5. The opposite of subtracting 2/5 is to add 2/5. And of course, we'll need to do that to both sides. Our minus and plus 2/5 on the left side cancel out, leaving us with just x. And on the right side, we have the calculation -1/3 plus my 2/5. We know to add fractions, we need a common denominator. So let's go ahead and make a common denominator of 15. So I get -5/15 for my first fraction, and I get 6/15 for my second fraction. Once I have a common denominator, I can simply add the tops. So -5 plus 6 is +1, and keep that bottom, x is 1/15. Final question, we want to remember that this 6x over 7 is really 6/7 x, and from here it's similar to question A. That 6/7 was being multiplied by our x, so the opposite of multiplying by 6/7 is dividing by 6/7, which we'll do to both sides of the equation. On the left side, our 6/7 cancels out, leaving us with just x. And on the other side, we have the calculation -14/15 divided by 6/7. To do that calculation, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, 7/6. And we'll do this calculation here. To make this a little bit smaller, I'm going to go ahead and divide out the common factor of 2 that can be found in 14 and 6. So this will really be 7 times 7, which is 49. Since negative, we'll be -49. On the bottom, it will be 15 times 3 is 45. So x is the fraction, -49, 45. So those are single step equations, just to kind of get our hands around how we work with our fraction coefficients. In our main focus, we want to follow our same normal 4 steps for dealing with equations, and we'll just have to do some work with our fractions. So if we start with question A, our first step is to expand any brackets. In question A, we don't have any brackets, so step 1 was a freebie. Step 2 is to collect your positive x's. So we want to leave the x's that have the larger coefficient. We want to cancel the x's that have the smaller coefficient. So if we take a look at our coefficients here, both of them are positive, but 5/4 is bigger than 1/2. 5/4 is obviously bigger than 1 whole, which is bigger than a half. So I want to cancel the 1/2 x on the right side, and the opposite of plus 1/2 x is minus 1/2 x, which I'll do to both sides of the equation. My plus 1/2 x and my minus 1/2 x do cancel out on the right side. And on the left side, I have the calculation 5/4 x take away 1/2 x. I know that this is just going to be 5/4 take away 1/2, and then an x at the end. And to subtract these fractions, I'm going to need a common denominator. This is 5/4 take away 2/4, which gives me 3/4 x. Then I have that constant of 3/4 as well. On the other side, my plus 1/2 x and minus 1/2 x canceled out. I still have my -9/4 constant. Next thing I need to do is undo the addition or subtraction on our x. So the opposite of adding 3/4 is subtracting 3/4, which we'll do from both sides. We do still have our 3/4 x out front. over here, negative 9/4, getting more negative by 3/4 is negative 12/4 for our fraction. Now you could simplify that at this stage, but I'm going to choose not to. The reason I'm going to choose not to is I'm just going to go ahead and finish up with my equation solving steps first. So the opposite of multiplying x by 3/4 is to divide by 3/4, which we'll do on both sides. And we'll go ahead and observe that those cross out, leaving us with just x on the left. To do this division, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. And of course, we're going to cross out our 4's, and 12 divided by 3 is 4 again. So negative 4 is our solution for our x. In question B, we again do not have any brackets to deal with here. And we know that our positive 3/4 will be bigger than negative 2/8. So we're going to want to leave the x's on the left, and we'll cancel out the negative 2/8 x on the right. So the opposite of minus 2/8 x is plus 2/8 x, which we'll do to both sides. And one thing I should mention here is it can be helpful to simplify. So I know that 2/8 is really just 1/4 by dividing out that common factor of 2. And so I can see my 3/4 plus my 1/4 x is just going to be 1 whole x. It'll be 4/4, which is 1 whole. I'm also going to notice that this fraction over here can simplify, and this fraction is the fraction 1/3. From here, we're going to go ahead and undo our addition. So the opposite of adding 1/3 is subtracting 1/3 from both sides. So we get just our 1x, which is just x on the left side, and on the right side we have the calculation negative 3/2 subtract 1/3. We're going to go ahead and make a common denominator of 6 here. This will be negative 9/6, take away 2/6, and negative 9, getting more negative by 2, is negative 11/6. In question C, we're going to start by collecting our x's. So 2x's is bigger than 3/4 x. So what's the opposite of positive 3/4 x? That's going to be subtract 3/4 x. I know that 2x is really 8/4. And 8/4 x, take away 3/4 x, is going to be 5/4 x. We still have our constant of -1, and on the other side, we still have our constant of +9. If you want just 9, that's fine. Next, we're going to undo that subtraction. So the opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1. We're going to have 5/4 x is equal to 10. And from here, we're going to undo our multiplication. The opposite of multiplying by 5/4 is dividing by 5/4, which we'll do on both sides. When we divide by 5/4, we're really multiplying by 4/5. 10 divides by 5 to give me 2, and 2 times 4 is 8. Finish up on the front side here, question D. We do want to recognize that our x over 9 is really 1/9 x. And likewise, our x over 2 is really 1/2 x. So if you're having trouble with this question, keep those things in mind. From here, we're going to go ahead and collect our x's. So we want our larger coefficient to stay. So let's think about 1/9 versus 1/2. Okay, one piece of a whole where the whole is 2 parts is going to be bigger than one piece of a whole where the whole is 9 parts. Okay, obviously, if you slice your pizza into 9 parts, one slice will be smaller than if you only slice it into 2 parts. So we're going to go ahead and cancel out our 1/9 x. The opposite of plus 1/9 x is minus 1/9 x, which we'll do to both sides. Okay, on the left of the wall, we still have our negative 4/3 constant. On the right side, we need to do 1/2 minus 1/9, and we'll make a common denominator there of 18. So this will be 9 over 18, take away 2 over 18, which is going to be 7/18 x. We also have our constant of -1. Next, we're going to do that subtraction. So the opposite of subtracting 1 is to add 1 to both sides. We'll have our 7/18 x on the right side. On the left side, negative 4/3 plus 3/3 will be negative 1/3. Again, obviously 1 is the same as 3/3. Finishing up, we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by our 7/18. We'll have just x on the right side. On the left side, we'll have our negative 1/3 divided by 7/18, which is negative 1/3 times, so it should be using times, my 18/7, and divide out that common factor of 3, and that'll give me negative 6/7 as the value of my x. So I hope this has helped you with applying your 4 steps to equations that have fractional coefficients.